from Delegate Helmer. You can. Yes, we can. Yes. HB 2 and HB 466.
This if I can move it a little bit.
Yes.
Good. Well, my script says good afternoon, but I think it's good early evening. Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, we have heard a lot today about the impact of gun violence on our communities. In that spirit, we've brought forth House Bill 2, which would end the sale of dangerous weapons, dangerous assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. The bill would stop the sale of weapons similar to those I carried in Iraq and Afghanistan. Those weapons were designed with a sole purpose: to place accurate, sustained, aimed fire on an enemy and kill him. These weapons of war should not be for sale here in our Commonwealth. They have no role in our streets. Our kids are not Al-Qaeda. Our schools, our community centers, our college campuses, our nightclubs, and our shopping malls aren't war zones, or at least they shouldn't be. High-capacity magazines lead to 5 times as many deaths in mass shootings. Those magazines were involved in the deadly shootings in Virginia Beach, Virginia Tech, and other mass shootings in our Commonwealth. In mass shootings that resulted in more than 4 deaths, 85% of the deaths were caused by assault weapons. It's my hope that all of us on the subcommittee truly want to make our communities safer. Today, we have an opportunity to save lives, and I hope it will be the will of this subcommittee to report House Bill 2. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Does any members from the public desire to speak in favor of this bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, Jeff Caruso with the Virginia Catholic Conference. Every human life is sacred, and many of you have heard us say that many times over the course of many years on many different bills. And it applies to this one too. And we think that this bill can indeed save lives. And if it saves even one life, it's certainly well worth doing. So we hope you'll agree with us, and we hope you'll pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Kim Bobo. I'm the director of the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. We've not done a lot of work in this space, and when I brought to my board our proposed agenda, they said, we want you to add supporting this ban on assault weapons. It's so important in our communities. Every single clergy member on my board said, this is a priority. We ask you to support this as an organization. So we ask you to support the bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Andrew Goddard, Virginia Center for Public Safety. Rather than saying just that I support the bill, I'd like to try and preempt some of the things that might be said in opposition. This is not about what these guns look like. It's not about what accessories they have on them. It's what makes them scary is not the fact that they're black, not the fact that they have a second grip. It's the fact of what they can do. These guns fire bullets at over 3,000 feet per second. Those bullets entering flesh will cause damage to parts of the body that the bullet themselves never touches. This is not the same with a handgun bullet. We're afraid of these things because of what they do, not because of what they look like. They have no place in a civilized society in the hands of usually untrained civilians. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, good evening. Liddy Ballard from the Brady Center to Prevent Gun Violence. When an assault weapon is used in a public mass shooting, nearly 14 times as many people are killed. are injured and twice as many are killed. Would-be mass shooters have and will continue to seek out the weapons and accessories which enable them to kill the most people in the shortest amount of time. This committee has the opportunity to make Virginians safer, and I urge you to take it. Brady supports this bill.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Lori Haas. There's so much to be said in support of this bill. A couple things that occur to me. It's been said that a semi-automatic assault rifle, sometimes referred to as an AR-15 or some other thing, is just a rebranded M16. These are weapons of war designed to kill as many people in as short amount of time as possible. The damage they do to the human body cannot be described. You do not want to know what the parents of those 6-year-olds at Sandy Hook have shared with me. These kill people, they kill children, they're the weapon of choice in mass shootings, they increase the body count, they increase death, they increase injury. These are weapons of war. They have no place on our streets, they have no place in a civil society, and whatever you call them, we need to ban them and regulate them. I hope you support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll move to the online queue. I do ask that you all be brief as we are already over time for speaking in support. But first up is Ms. Erin Arp. You're fine.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, or good evening, Mr. Chair. Erin Earp, I'm with the Giffords Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence. We support this bill for all the reasons that have previously been stated, but I will also just simply highlight that this bill does not affect firearms unless they are manufactured after July 1st of 2024, unless the person is under the age of 21. And that's also the case with high-capacity magazines. It only applies to those materials that are manufactured after July 1st of 2024. We think this is a very important measure to ensure that our communities are safe, to ensure that dangerous weapons of war are not increasing the rate of mass casualty shootings across the nation. We've seen this in places like Buffalo and Uvalde, and we believe this is a common sense measure to keep Virginians safe. We urge you to favorably report the bill.
Thank you. Next in the queue is Ms. Hanowich. And you're on mute, Ms. Hanowich.
Sorry. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Jean Hanowich, Chesapeake, Virginia, speaking on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Virginia. Since 1990, the League of Women Voters has recognized that the proliferation of semi-automatic and automatic weapons in the United States is a major health and safety threat to the citizens of the United States. Assault weapons are exceptionally deadly firearms, commonplace in mass shootings, mass fatality shootings, and should be banned in Virginia. Please vote yes. Thank you for your time, and I thank the delegate for bringing forth this legislation.
Thank you. Next in the queue is Andy Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Delegate Helmer, for bringing this bill. All I can add to the previous comments is, for those of you that think that you need an assault weapon for home protection, you're not defending your home, you're in a firefight. If you really want to own one of these, go join the military like Dan Helmer did. Thank you.
Thank you. Next in queue is Mr. Fleetman. Oh, Mr. Fleetman has left. We will keep going with Dr. Virginia.
Virginia Rovnak, Crozet, member of the Charlottesville Coalition for Gun Violence Prevention. I think this is probably the most important gun safety law that will be considered, and I heartily support it. People with a grudge should not be able to mow down dozens with a pull of a trigger, and that's preposterous. We must stop this. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any members of the public wish to speak against this bill?
Philip Van Cleve, VCDL. Well, first I would say the Second Amendment clearly protects my right to own a weapon of war. That was the whole point of protecting the first part dealing with militia, but it's the right of the people to keep and bear arms, but it most definitely allows that. Also, the Supreme Court's already said any firearm in common use is protected. AR-15s, for example, are the most common rifle right now. There are like 30 million of them out there. So I'm pretty sure you'll be coming back for all of those in the next round on this. The guns that Delegate Helmer carried in war were machine guns. These are not machine guns. If you had an illegal, if you own one of those, you could spend 10 years in jail for a machine gun. If there's no difference, then why is it 10 years in jail for owning a machine gun? Rifles are rifles. They all generate high-velocity rounds. That's what rifles do. The 223 round or 5.56, it's actually the same thing, that are used in an AR-15 are actually a mid-power round. It's nowhere near as powerful as a deer cartridge. Or the other type of rifles that hunt larger game, not nearly as powerful. Finally, right after Virginia Tech, then Governor Kane had a committee study Virginia Tech, and the conclusion in Virginia Tech's document was that the magazine capacity that Cho used would have made no difference in the outcome. That is in the report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening, Chair. Taylor McKee with the National Rifle Association. We adamantly oppose this ban on semi-automatic firearms. It creates a new class of prohibited person. Not only does it attack so-called assault weapons, but it is centerfire semi-automatic rifles, pistols, and shotguns are limited in this bill as well. Prohibits 18 to 20-year-olds from possessing a handgun, and the standard of review, as mentioned earlier, under the new Bruin test, is commonly owned firearms. There's no historical analogy that I've been able to come across or legal has where it bans the most commonly owned firearm in the country. So under the text history tradition test, we believe it fails. I mean, these are used for hunting, recreation, and defense, not strictly. And there's an estimated 10 to 20 million in existence today. So it's pretty commonly used and pretty commonly owned for lawful legal purposes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Patricia Webb, Virginia Citizens Defense League. If these are weapons of war, why are we giving them to our police? Who are they at war with? This bill, as I read it, would prevent dealers from selling any firearm manufactured after the bill goes into effect on July 1st if it passes. That would apply to anybody in state or out of state, anything that was manufactured after July 1st of this year. That would put all of the dealers in Virginia out of business. These are the same dealers that you want to serialize privately made firearms. Where are people going to go to get their firearms? If both bills passed, you've just made it impossible for privately made firearms to get serialized.
Thank you.
This is unconstitutional under Bruin.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, fellow citizens, I stand before you today not as an advocate for violence, but as a staunch defender of our sacred liberties. The proposed assault weapons ban threatens the very essence of our freedom, echoing the tyrannies our ancestors fought so valiantly to escape. Just as Patrick Henry declared not far from here, "Give me liberty or give me death," we must recognize that restricting the rights of law-abiding citizens is a dangerous path. Our forefathers entrusted us with a Second Amendment to safeguard against tyranny. And to compromise it is to jeopardize the very fabric of our republic. Let us not forget that it is not the tools themselves, but the individuals that wield them that bear the responsibility. Instead of infringing upon our rights, let us instead focus on addressing the root cause of the violence, promoting mental health, strengthening our communities, and in the spirit of liberty, let us stand united against the encroachment on our fundamental rights, for history has taught us that a disarmed populace is a vulnerable one. I implore you to safeguard our freedom, for it is our duty to uphold the legacy bequeathed to us by those who fought so hard for the liberty we hold dear.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. I agree with all of my before speakers, and please Don't do this. Bye-bye, thank you.
Hello, my name is Lynn Evans Johnson, and I support VCDL. So many comments can be made, girding and changing and interfering with the ability to have a firearm. I support VCDL wholeheartedly, and I'm not a member of them.
Thank you. We'll move to the online queue. First up is Mr. Adams, David Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David Adams, Virginia Shooting Sports Association, the state affiliate of the NRA. We strongly oppose this bill. Many of our members shoot competitively, and they use the very firearms that the patron is trying to ban. Many of our clubs host competitions throughout the spring into the early fall using those firearms. They are the most popular firearm used at the national matches at Camp Perry every summer. These are not weapons of war, and the patron knows that because they're semi-automatic, and the United States military does not send him off to war with a semi-automatic firearm. I honor his service, just like my nephew and my son-in-law, but this is an unconstitutional law. I ask the committee to oppose it. Thank you.
Mr. John Colcosser.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John Colclasser here with Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation. We are strongly opposed to this legislation as well. In addition to limited access for legal hunting in the shooting sports, I just want y'all to consider that this will have a serious negative impact on conservation funding for the Commonwealth through the Pittman-Robertson federal excise taxes. Virginia receives about $12 million annually and almost $300 million since 1937, and that money is used for habitat restoration, land conservation, and other natural resource work. So again, we're strongly opposed to this legislation, and thank you for your time.
Delegate Helmer, could you answer me in terms of we've heard a lot from the gun industry that the past federal ban on assault weapons it didn't work. Could you speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'd answer to the delegate that the 1994 federal assaults ban was incredibly effective. While the ban was in effect, gun massacres, which were defined as 6 or more people shot and killed, fell by 37%, and the number of people dying from gun massacres declined by 43%. So imagine in our Commonwealth and the tragedies we've had that by putting something like this in place, we might be able to decrease the loss of life by 40 or more percent. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Delegate Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to piggyback on what the delegate just said about the federal assault weapons ban and what the question raised by Delegate Fagans, I mean, it was only in effect for 10 years and had such a positive effect on reducing both the use of assault weapons in crimes and the number of firearm injuries and fatalities in mass shootings. In 2004, the U.S. Department of Justice, the George Bush U.S. Department of Justice, found that following the implementation of the ban, a number of cities and jurisdictions reported declines in the number of assault weapons recovered from crime scenes. These declines range from 17% to 72%. That was from the DOJ. Researchers analyzing public mass shootings from 1982 through 2011 found that both state and federal bans on assault weapons resulted in decreased rates of mass shooting fatalities. The federal ban also indicated a decrease in mass shooting injuries. A 2019 study examined mass shootings from 1981 through 2017 and analyzed the risk of fatalities in those incidents. The study found that during the 10-year period the federal ban was in effect, mass shooting fatalities were 70% less likely to occur than either before or after the ban. And then finally, research from Stanford University reviewed mass shootings, which they defined as a mass shooting as an incident in which a shooter killed 6 or more people in a public setting. Over a 35-year period, they did this study at Stanford. The analysis found that the decade during which the federal assault weapons ban was in effect was linked to a 25% decrease in mass shootings and a 40% decrease in mass shooting deaths. Additionally, the research found that in the decade after the ban expired, mass shooting deaths increased exponentially. And when someone talks about the intent of the founders regarding the Second Amendment, and when they always forget about the well-regulated militia part, they were also, even though they were sage men, and the women who supported that, they were not thinking about assault weapons or bazookas or AR-15s. They were talking about muskets that an expert could load and fire 3 times in a minute. They were not talking about modern day weaponry. So I fully support this bill, and I'm anxious to see it passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Cardoza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can address some of the comments and then ask the patron a question.
Delegate has it.
Okay, so first off, to address the comment about military weapons, weapons issued, I was in the Air Force. Airmen and Army members are, as their primary, not the secondary, as one of the panel members described, are automatic or 3-round burst weapons, which are all machine guns. So yes, our military is outfitted with machine guns when they go to war. Secondly, the founding fathers were aware, and there's historical evidence that they actually tested some of these weapons, of the early repeating weapons. So they were aware of firearms technology progressing when they, at the time when they put in the provisions of the Second Amendment. So those two things are false. Now, that being said, my question for the patron is, your bill seems to mostly address these assault weapons, mostly rifles, which the Virginia State Police has at about 5% of the murders of the gun violence in the Commonwealth. However, most murders committed by handguns are perpetrated against African American men. And my question to you is, what does your bill do to address that great problem, which most murders are against African American men, when you're only targeting 5% of the gun violence? Why do you not have a bill that's going to stop this gun violence against African Americans?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I would answer the delegate that I find it deeply disturbing that the delegate has no interest in stopping 5% of murders in the Commonwealth, because I think 5% is too much. And I think that 5% of those also include many communities of color. But we are very open and would love to see the members of the subcommittee support any legislation that would stop the other 95% of murders as well. And I would love to see the record reflect an increased focus on making sure that we keep all of our communities safe, both from the most dangerous weapons and also from weapons used in everyday shootings. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'd like to follow up to that if I have a moment.
We have another bill to get to, so we're going to keep it moving.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion at the appropriate time.
Yes. Mr. Chair, I'd just love to have the final word here. One, I know there's been a lot of discussion about machine guns and such. I will say that I served and was commissioned as a combat arms officer. I trained on a 50 caliber machine gun. I had a Mark 19 when I was serving in Afghanistan. I know what a machine gun looks like. Anybody who served in the military carried an M4 or M16 knows that you train on that as a semi-automatic weapon. It does have a burst mode, but the ability to put sustained, aimed, repeat fire on an enemy in semi-automatic mode is the thing that these weapons do. But I've also heard a lot of testimony today about these weapons being commonly used. What they are commonly used on is the massacres of folks in our communities. And that's what this bill tries to stop. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Lopez.
I'd like to move to report the bill.
I'd like to speak to that motion.
What appropriate?
No, and I'd like to move the bill and refer to appropriations.
There has been a motion to report and refer to appropriations. Delegate Cardoza.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very interested in the 5%, but I'm more interested in the 95% of our black youth and black men being killed in our streets. And I want to see a bill come out about that first. The fact that we keep hearing about these assault weapons, but no one wants to address the elephant of the room of our African Americans being killed on the streets is striking to me. And I think that is the major problem, as they are the victims of the most murders in the Commonwealth. So that's I wanted to make the record straight on that, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, speaking to the bill.
Delegate Simon.
I know the hour is late, and I just can't let that be the last word, because this is not an either-or situation. And to suggest that it is, right, and this is sort of a whataboutism, and we hear about this a lot. It's a common rhetorical technique, but it's meant to mislead and throw you off. I would suggest to you that this subcommittee and the large committee of public safety is deeply concerned with violence in all of our communities, particularly those communities of color, particularly those areas that are economically disadvantaged, particularly those areas that don't have educational community supports that they ought to have. Members of this caucus have brought forward legislation, comprehensive legislation, to create violence interruption programs, community-based gun violence programs that have been underfunded and defunded by the Republicans in this body. And so I can't let that suggestion, I know it's late, I can't let that suggestion lay there. I can't let that go. And I hope that folks watching at home understand that we can look at all these bills in their specific context. But if you want to have a debate over which side of this dais has tried harder and done more and worked harder to address the disproportionate impact of gun violence on communities of color, I will have that debate with you at another place, another time, but any time. I stand behind our record on that. And so thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate Simon. We have a motion to report and refer to appropriations, properly second. Can the clerk open the roll?
Mr. Chair, I'm a definite yes.
The clerk will close the roll. HB 2 reports out 6-4.